Take a second and think. What is your most memorable moment in Escape from Tarkov? Take a second to put that in the comments. I'm gonna guess that 100% of you are going to mention something regarding PvP.
There's another dude.
But what if it didn't have to be that way?
Fuck. Chris, you fucking killed me, you fucker.
If there's one thing holding Escape from Tarkov back from being truly great, it is scavs and their AI. People have mixed feelings about their difficulty, but we can all agree at one thing. They are dumber than a bag of hammers. Many of us know this, but where we fall short as a community is imagining what the lifecycle of the game would be with great AI. Hello everyone, this is cztl, and today is the first video in a series where I'll be dissecting the realism in Escape from Tarkov. The goal of these videos is not to talk down about my favorite game or criticize the developers, but to provide constructive feedback that I think could really change the way we play Escape from Tarkov. Now I know this has been covered extensively by other content creators, and Veritas most recently put out 2 great videos which I'll link in the description, but I want to expand on this and focus on the impact to the game. So first, let's try to break down the scav behavior. I'm going to preface this part by saying I am not a game developer, but I am a very experienced software developer and software architect. Good AI requires some form of artificial consciousness. With consciousness, they can analyze situations and apply strategy and tactics to make the gameplay really immersive. This is what humans do, and that's why PvP makes for some of the most rewarding experiences that you have in Tarkov. Now we know what analysis, strategy, and tactics are at a high level, but what is artificial consciousness? It is awareness, memory, learning, anticipation, and subjective experience. Now, no game is going to get this 100%, but the idea is to try to do each of these well enough so that during the course of gameplay you don't realize any big flaws in them. So let's analyze a piece of footage and see how Tarkov does. This is a small sample, but I want to show you how you can analyze this behavior yourselves. First up, awareness, which is the perception of a situation or your reactions to react to it.
Hey you! Fuck you!
When AI doesn't do this one correctly, it's probably the most obvious one to the end user. In this clip, I'm not able to be seen by this scav, but I am clearly able to be heard, and I do not believe they have a sense of hearing. If he was aware, you'd expect him to get either more into cover or engage me. His gun is always pointing straight ahead and he's always anticipating combat. Furthermore, he's not exhibiting realistic behavior by always shifting his feet. If he was leaning against the wall, he could turn his head 90 degrees in both directions and have an entire view of anything that could see him. He'd also be expending less energy. He does move when I fire a gun right next to him, but I think that's just him reacting to the act of firing a gun in the proximity that he's in. He then looks at either me or the exact direction where the shot was fired through the wall. And that's a good segue into memory, because 30 seconds later, he's back in the same exact sequence of movements that he was doing before. As for learning, he should be more vigilant and probably detect PMCs faster when they go into his vision. That should definitely get him to react differently. And the scav clearly has no anticipation, as he doesn't take a step back when he sees me charging at him with a knife. As for subjective experience, any scav that sees these pile of bodies should be running away and trying to gang up with a bunch of other scavs, not trying to rush in. So after that demonstration, Rashad, do you still think the AI in Tarkov is good? Those are just a couple examples. There are even worse examples of enemies that are supposed to be much harder that make them seem absolutely brain dead. So essentially the scavs in Tarkov are like motion detectors. They just tell the other PMCs in the map where you are. To make the game challenging so that you can't just run through maps when the servers are dead, allowing you to easily extract a bunch of loot, or to farm the harder enemies, what does BSG have to do? They have to turn these bots into hackers, essentially, aimbots. We already have enough hackers. We don't need bots that can 360 no-scope you before you see them. There are a lot of great developers at BSG. Why is creating good AI in Tarkov so difficult? I think the answer is, it's really difficult to make good AI in a first-person shooter. It's not like chess or anything where you're working with a 2D board and finite pieces that you can move. Not to mention, chess is turn-based. There's so many different things that you could do in battle, and everything has to be evaluated every tick on the server. In order to start the discussion and give BSG some feedback about how they can improve Scav AI, first we need to understand some basic concepts and ways that AI is implemented. So what are some ways to implement AI? Well, you could write a bunch of if-then rules, but each of those things is a combination of a bunch of different minor things. For instance, patrol. If you just had your character moving in a random direction on every tick of the server, he would just wind up roughly staying in place and being spazzy. You could have him move in a random direction for a random period of time, but then you'd find scavs in weird places, getting stuck. You could have him move forward till he couldn't move forward anymore, take a 90-degree turn, and try to do that again, but then he would still end up getting stuck. You wind up with a bunch of conditional rules and your code would be impossible to debug. You could have every action that you could perform be a function that takes in the current data and figures out the best score. That's computationally expensive, and you end up doing random things and transitions that you shouldn't be doing, like healing when you should be shooting at your enemy. With those two very rudimentary tactics out of the way, let's move on to two more in-depth tactics that are used in video games today. First, we have the older and less used finite state machine, which I think is actually used in Escape from Tarkov. This is a very dumbed down of a finite state machine that I created myself. So, in this finite state machine, let's start off with patrol. You can randomly wiggle, and that could be generated based off a random number that you would generate. If you are patrolling and you arrive at a checkpoint, you can rest and look around. After 15 seconds, you can go back to patrolling. In the interest of both our times, I won't recite the rest, but feel free to look at it, and there's actually one bug. Let's see if you can find it. First of all, this would be some terrible AI. And second, look at all the connections and blocks there are. It is very hard to follow, which is probably one of the reasons why Nikita said he doesn't always know why scavs do certain things. It's just very hard to follow something as complicated as this with this many connections. Furthermore, you want to make the AI more sophisticated? Try inserting something into this graph. You're going to make even more connections and make it even more complicated. So it doesn't scale that well. The final method I'm going to cover is becoming more and more prevalent in the game industry. This method is behavior trees. Contrary to finite state machines that can run into evaluation loops, behavior trees find successful actions by only traversing downward. These trees typically consist of three types of nodes: selector nodes, sequence nodes, and action or task nodes. There's also something called a blackboard that is used to keep track of information about the state of the game that can be used by any of these nodes. With behavior trees, the action nodes, which have no nodes that are connected below it, are what the AI performs. There are many advantages of using behavior trees. Most notably, we have it uses less computational power. It typically does not get updated every tick or frame. It's easier to debug because you can easily see where you are in the tree. Nodes are reusable, and it's also easier to modify the tree. Take a look at this example. On the right side of the tree, if the player is not visible, then the AI will voice line. That's not a great experience. We want to have them patrol if they don't see a player. So we can easily just move the nodes and get that behavior. Now that we've covered some basic AI concepts in games, how could Tarkov AI be improved to provide a better gameplay experience? First of all, if they aren't using any behavior tree concepts, they should start transitioning to that model. They can do that by slowly lifting and shifting pieces of functionality out of their current design and into a behavior tree, such as patrol could be something that they move out. It would also be helpful for them to have a debugging and visualization layer, so even people who aren't developers can look at a negative experience that they had with Scav and then try to recommend fixes for it or even do it themselves. Secondly, I think the prioritization system that they currently have is a little bit out of whack. Notice in this clip, I'm shooting at one scav and then I let him get away because I noticed I have a bigger threat of the sniper scav up above. Second, scavs should be able to hear sound instead of just react to things that the player does. And similarly, player scavs should react to actions the player does instead of just the first action that they do. For instance, if I start running toward him, he should probably back up a little bit. They should work on the pathing of scavs to find cover more, instead of just running at the player and doing nothing. That's an easy kill for me. They need to improve the reaction time of scavs. Even though they're not trained militarily, they're still modeling a human, and humans mostly have the same or similar reaction times. I'm not necessarily saying they need to shoot at you or head eyes you right away, but they need to get into cover, maybe panic shoot near you, or even voice line asking to be spared. The AI should move more humanly. Why do they pivot so much? They should slowly move their head back and forth instead of turning 90 degrees. And they shouldn't see you instantly at a distance. Maybe they become more alert if they think they saw someone. They should not always choose to engage you. They should not instantly know that you're an enemy if you shine a flashlight at them, if they can't see you. Who are they talking to across the map? Are they talking to themselves or their friends? Anyway, stop shouting. And also, stop telling me that you know where I am if I don't see you by shouting at me. Allow for some stealth takedowns. I've never been able to kill a scab with a melee weapon without him detecting me first. And finally, they need to have goals, and their actions should reflect them. As humans, they should prioritize staying alive over killing you. They shouldn't really use grenades, but when they do, the PMC should probably be suppressed first. I have no military training, but I know my first instinct would never be to reach for a grenade when I'm being shot from 10 meters away. Now those are some good surface level improvements that can be made, but I want to argue that scavs need to be changed dramatically to make Escape from Tarkov a better game. The goal with these next suggestions is to create a system that would allow for some very interesting and rewarding interactions without PvP, and make the gameplay not feel as stale. First, treat a group of scavs the same way that you would treat a scav. They should share a common goal and have a separate behavior tree. They should be pursuing that goal unless they get interrupted. If you design this right, you could have one tree processing instead of 3 trees for a group of 3 scavs, and that would improve performance. It would almost be like if you encountered a group of 3 PMCs, although the scavs would be a lot more scattered out and doing random things, really not paying attention as much. Next, you need more scavs on the map at any given time. You shouldn't be able to run through the entire map without seeing a single individual. We should have some idling scavs. Not all scavs should have their gun at high ready all of the time. They should be doing something, like kicking a can down the road or just sitting down. Don't give scavs static spawns. If you know exactly where they are, it makes raids very predictable. Similarly, if you know where PMCs spawn, you just go run right over to the spawns and kill them. Now imagine some of the scenarios that you would find yourself into if you put all of those improvements together.
I don't fucking know shit.
Imagine on Shoreline, a group of 5 scavs that spawn in the village are going to loot for supplies and bring them back to their house. Imagine you shift Wing into a house and realizing there's a group of sleeping scavs that heard you come in and then they blast you in the face. Imagine a group of scavs coming into the map that you're on and looking for a new base. And now, imagine that you're in cottages and you see a group of 20 scavs walking past on the road. And some of them are going inside. To avoid them, you have to hide in one of the rooms, maybe behind the bed. In all those hypothetical scenarios, the scavs have a goal and it would make for a lot more authentic encounters. So why is this the biggest problem with the game? And why should we focus on AI so much? It would force people to be more careful rather than just shift Wing all around the map. It would make AI encounters more interesting. It would likely prolong the wipe, because you would die more to scavs. It would also prolong the wipe because your raids are going to be longer, and prolong it because you won't have as many people loot running in dead raids. It will make the economy better because people won't progress as fast. You won't get as mad at dying to scavs if they're actually intelligent, almost like raiders. There will be less cheesing and min-maxing going on with longer raids. Not only will this prolong the wipe, but 6 months after the previous wipe, people would still be playing because they could have these memorable encounters that you get with PvP. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video or found it entertaining, then definitely thwack that subscribe button because I have a lot more Tarkov Realism videos planned. And regardless if you liked it or not, smash like it at that ship button, subscribe for future Tarkov content, and I will see you on the battlefield. cztl out.